So just heading down to meet up with Ginn. He's a triple Olympic gold medalist in the rowing. He was part of the Awesome Foursome, which is a famous Australian group of four in the mid-90s. And absolute legend. He's a destroyer on a bicycle. He's converted from rowing to cycling. And we're just going to ask him a few questions on what he does for training and you know, things that he's going to do for preparation for the Melbourne to Warrnambool, which is a famous Australian classic bike race occurring next week in Victoria. And yeah, we'll just get some tips from him, just see what he's going to do to prepare for the race and go from there. So have you done it before?
Yeah, 2009. Yeah,
That's
I think
right,
I was 40th in 2009, 41st or something like that.
Yeah, I've done it. I did it in 2000.
Did you? Yeah.
So yeah, they strung it out for quite a while, and then it's a group went away.
That break. So this is what I was trying to find out from a few people as to. I don't know how often the breakers stayed away, and in 2009 it stayed away, and it got out to over 15 minutes, I think, for memory, and it never really came in much more than just under 10 minutes, I think. So, and then if you go back and look at the list of the break, and I think there was 15 riders or something like that, and you've got Joel Pearson, Tom Leaper, you go through a list and you just name after name after name, and you sort of realise, well, it was actually a bloody strong break.
That's right.
Naively, what I didn't know was, you know, you're sitting sort of around sort of the top 20 riders as you say, in the first half hour, and I'm watching the odd one go up the road, and the whole peloton, you know, surges to go with them, and they don't get away. The next person goes, and then you see this pairing up the road, and you go, shit, they've actually managed to get off the front, and then everyone sits up. You know, and then the next couple try, and before you know it, you're going, oh, I can't remember quite how many have gone up the road. And, you know, and then when you saw on the finish list, you're going, shit, there was 15 riders up the road or more. You know, and so.
So now knowing that,
yes,
will you be this weekend or this race coming? Will you be up the front? Will you be trying to sort of jump off with these boys? What do you think you're going to do?
I'm trying to get some advice from people. I think what I've heard about the last 5 years is, with the teams in the event, it does change the dynamic quite a lot. It all depends on who they send up the road, and so I don't know the answer to that question yet. And I haven't raced enough to know how to read it at the time, sort of thing. So I think I've got to make a bit of a call going in. I mean, I think if I was sensible, I'd be sitting back in the bunch and saying, let them all work and see what happens later on down the track. But I don't like getting bored. Yeah, I've got two guys that'll probably be helping on the road. My wife and her friend helped last time, and they actually did a really good job. We did a couple of trial runs of things, and my wife wore red gloves, fingerless gloves, and so it stood out like anything where she was in the group. These are my eyes. I wear glasses now, and I've now just got from Oakley a new set of prescription sunglasses, so hopefully I'll be able to see things a bit better in a distance. Look, the thing for me was, has been in the training was, you know, I had a good base up until about 4 weeks ago, so I was comfortable that getting through the race, you know, barring any accidents or injuries, is not sort of the thing that I'm concerned about. It's still a long way, and not racing enough is probably the thing, as to, you know, just got to be realistic about, you know, what's sort of possible. And so the feeds for me sorted, having support there, making sure the bike's in great working order, making sure nothing goes wrong, and double, triple checking that. Not knowing much about a lot of the guys who are going to be in the event, but knowing a few names. You know, I'll sort of follow a few people for a while, and probably going in, just make a bit of a call on whether or not there's any opportunity early on, or, you know, wait till camper down. Sort of thing. So, and then the weather.
And so why would you wait till camper down?
Because there's a couple of hills there. And so what I learnt last time was I spent way too much energy before there, and I think it might have been, you know, I was pretty sure I was in the second break at the time on the road, but the first break was a long way down the road, and so when you hit the hills, that fragmented as well. And if I had known a bit more about the course, certainly wouldn't have done as much work if I had been sitting back in the bunch. And I think that's the challenge, is being really sensible, you know, letting the peloton do the work rather than you doing the work, I think, is the key. And depending on the distance, I've been covering that sort of distance a lot in the last sort of 6 months in particular. So 200 to 300k rides I'm okay with. It's just the surges and the changes of speed I think really catch out. So for me, the training's been about mixing up a bit of volume you know, with some, you know, tough sort of group rides, but also making sure that you can do those 3, 4, 5, 6 different efforts, you know, and recover quickly and keep going again. And so doing that sort of stuff I find is almost best on trainer. Half hour, 40-minute sets of 30-second on, 30-second off sort of thing. So, and I did a bit of motor pacing on the weekend. Hadn't done that for years, and that was good stimulus as well. So there's a whole lot of things I think you can do as a mixture to get yourself ready, and ultimately anything goes. So, and for me, the biggest advice that I've received is, you know, make a choice about what you want to do. If you want to be in the break, commit to that. If you want to sit back and let the whole thing ride itself out and find an opportunity later on, be really sensible. Yeah, look, I'm not a big one for sugar. I'm not a big fan for that sort of stuff unless I'm really desperate and I've done something horribly wrong. For me, it's water. I've been getting bars from a lady, Ange Wiegard, who makes Hale Energy bars, and she works for Collingwood Football Club. She was at a Rafa thing recently, which was really cool, and the bars are sort of full of nuts, grains, all sorts of stuff that's really great tasting, pretty dense. So I find that I've been on long rides and having 2 of those bars for a 7-hour ride, you know, it seems to be pretty good. So for me, having, say, 2 of those, I'll throw some gels in just in case the last hour I'm a bit low, and then, you know, have as much water on the road as possible.
So do you use those gels when you're out training?
No. And that's why I'll only use them if I'm really low on energy, and I'll only use them if I know I'm really late and just needing something really quick to get in. I find, because as soon as I reach for that sort of stuff personally, I find that then I start this roller coaster of energy up, energy down, versus something that just sustains a bit longer. It doesn't quite give you the spike initially, but sustains you a bit longer. Hence the reason why I also like things like water, and you know, I love my chocolate milk on the road. Halfway through a ride, you have a chocolate milk from the service station. You know, so
and
so
you find that picks you up?
Well, not so much picks you up, but the protein in it. Milk's great electrolyte replacement, and then the chocolate's got enough sort of sugar in it that, you know, it's not too bad. But I find if anything's too sweet for me, I just have issues with it. So I'd even said to Ange recently about sort of, you know, nuts and salty versions of the bar, and she's made some like that to test, and so I'll be just using those in the race.
Okay, and these bars, they're called
Hale Energy.
Hale Energy.
Hale Energy, yeah. So they're not in actual official production yet, but I think she's got stuff online that she's doing, sort of thing. So it's
and
bananas.
And bananas.
So bananas are easy.
Yeah, they are.
You know, if you go hard right from the start and you keep trying to go hard, you've got 2 hours that you've got to sort of suffer and, you know, recover from. The biggest thing for me, I think, if you've got time to do long, slow, steady state, call it that. You know, that's the old running terminology. I think, great, do it. But if you're time poor, I just don't waste my time feeling guilty about not being able to get that in. I'd rather do threshold work, which is sort of 80 to 90% sort of max heart rate. And high intensity stuff for me is a mixture of high intensity without load and high intensity with load, you know, and that's a typical sort of spinning stuff in cycling versus strength endurance stuff. And I certainly find the strength endurance stuff, you know, nothing serves me better than riding the Frankston and back in the biggest gear possible, and just treating it like a hill climb for 2 hours. So
what sort of gearing? 53?
5311, and just keep it in that and ride all the way down, then ride all the way back, and depending on what the experience is, you just feel like you're doing just a strength endurance set for 2 hours. And it's great for the core because you've got to hold yourself still. But I'll find that if I'm doing that 2 to 3 times a week, that's my strength work. Hence the reason why I don't mind riding by myself and don't mind doing beach road. Because I think beach road for me is simple because you know it. Traffic lights are a pain in the butt, but to use it as this is a hill climbing session by a gear preference, or this is a threshold session because you're going to do 3 to 5 minute, 7-minute pieces on and a minute 2 off, and I've got a power meter, so it makes it that a little bit easier from a measurement standpoint. But heart rate's a great indicator as well. So my max is sort of 183, 184. I don't know if I can sort of do a 7-minute piece at 160, and I can do 4 or 5 repeats at that. Then I'm getting my threshold demand in and that means that your rides are only ever 90 minutes to 2 hours sort of long, but try to be out on the bike almost every day.
Yeah, right. Okay. And if you miss a couple of days or you're sick, what do you think about? Does that affect a person negatively, or is that a good thing?
Nah, good thing. If it happens because it's forced upon you by illness and injury, then it's definitely a good thing because your body's finally told you that it's time.
Yeah.
If it happens because of work, it's a good thing because you find that after 2 days you get back on the bike and you go, actually, that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
I think if you've got time to ride consistently, certainly do that.
Yeah.
But I think the way I tend to ride, if you ride every single day of the week,
yeah,
consistently is great, but you can also start to sort of get in a bit of a grind where you're just pushing yourself too hard every single time.
Yeah.
But I've come from the rowing side of things where it's very prescribed, you're very targeted, and you work hard because there's no slipstreaming in rowing.
Yeah.
So if you can learn to tolerate keeping the force on the handle,
yeah,
a bit like keeping the force on the pedal face,
yeah,
then your system adapts over time. But if you're also competing against others all the time, when you're having a bad day, you feel crap against others.
Yeah.
When you're having a bad day by yourself, you can sort of lick out the numbers and just enjoy whatever the ride is for whatever level. So, but I do find for me, threshold's sort of the gold standard, and high intensity is good, and long steady state, if you've got time, do it. But if you don't have time, don't stress it. Which is
I suppose as you get older you get less time with kids and stuff.
And it's easy with the long steady state sort of stuff to get used to convincing yourself you're doing great training because you've done a week of long Ks or 2 weeks of long Ks, but in the grand scheme of things, and particularly when you're an older athlete or an older rider, the bump in fitness is so small. But if you get very targeted and measured about, say, an indoor session that you might use twice a week, you see over 12 weeks you might find huge gains. You might find 2 to 5% gain over 12 weeks, or you could sit on the bike and do the Ks on the road and be spending a lot of time away from family, a lot of time struggling to manage it with work, and not see any gain. And I've seen that plenty of times in rowers training where they're not getting better, but they're taking a lot of time to train. So if I had a choice, if I only had 30 minutes a day, it'd be 30 minutes of threshold.
Right. With you.
Problem with being bigger and taller on a bike, you need a bike that actually sustains what you're doing over time. So I find that I just go through tyres and I go through equipment, go through chains, cassettes and all that sort of stuff. So that's the one curse with riding more, is your equipment wears out.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? It's a pain.
So you need to, I reckon, with that sort of stuff, I laugh. Not that I'm being looked after by any bike store, but I think you've got to develop a good relationship with a bike store where they're happy to sort of at least do stuff for the cost, or they're happy to throw in the labour or whatever it might be.
So are you going to run the tubulars in the Warny? You are? Okay. And so what if you puncture
if I puncture, I've got to suss out what the scenario is. I can get access to a set of carbon clinchers if I want, that are 50mm. I'm yet to finalise that, but I'd rather use the wheels that I'm comfortable with. I've ridden to and from, my dad's got a farm down in Cape Patterson in South Gippsland, and I've ridden to and from there with tubulars, where I ride down on a Friday night, ride back on a Sunday, 150 to 180 Ks each trip, and I've ridden tubulars without spares, without tools, and the one time I sort of go, I'll change the wheels over and I'll carry spares, is the one time I get a flat, and it's always the way. So what I do like about the tubulars is, and I've learnt to glue them as well, so I played around with that. I generally get less flats. If there's less crap on the road, you get less flats. If there's lots of crap on the road, you get just flats anyway. So
what's your philosophy? If you're flat with those tubulars, you just...
I learnt to carry a Tuffo. I think it was a ultralight Tuffo. So I eventually sort of just plugged one of those into a spare bottle. And so just having that, throwing it back on the rim, just being careful around corners and all that sort of stuff, and just getting home from wherever you're at. And just carrying a little pump. And I like the pleasure of riding a tubular. I mean, it's probably more nostalgic and mindset than anything else, but they sound cool, it feels cool, and just to be able to have someone go to you, oh, wait, you're running tubulars, you go, yeah, thanks. And the fact that you feel like you've glued them yourself, and you put them on, you're taking time and care to do that. The actual changing out the road, to throw the spare on, to whip that off and throw the spare on, takes all of a minute.
It's pretty easy, isn't it?
I mean, if you really glue them ridiculously hard for a race, then it's a bit different getting them off. For the race, it's a bit of a gamble. If I run a tubular and there's no spare vehicle or whatever else I can get to and all that sort of stuff, well, that's what it is. The project at the time with John O'Hall, was a former rider and worked at the VS as a triathlon coach, Raul Lucia, who did all the carbon stuff, was to see if they could take a rower and help them convert across to being a time trialist on the road or on the track, and so we were pretty serious about that and came up short. But I actually got ill about 2 weeks before, which didn't help the cause. So power-wise, I was down significantly on what I'd been training at. So, but I didn't have the confidence to be able to sit there and say, all right, I'll keep persisting inside the sport at this level without being on a team and all that, and with my family and with coming out of rowing, and I just couldn't take the risk of all that sort of stuff. So I got advice from some internal people that said, well, you're not going to get a spot unless you're on a team, and unless you're on a team, you're not going to get to the major races, which are going to have major time trials, so therefore we won't pick you. And I completely understood that. You don't want to take a risk on someone. So it meant that really, in an event like that, you needed to win it, knock a lot of the best guys off. And so the second year was fascinating. The second year had a lot of the guys, so Cam Meyer was there the first year, then you had Bob Ridge and all these guys coming in the second year off the track. And so Michael Matthews, I raced against him a couple of times between the Oceania event and then Tour of Brighton and then the TT. And the difference was they were just slipperier, they were just faster. So I'd be producing, I think the second time around I produced 445 watts for the hour. First time I was down on watts, and the plan was to be about 450, 470 in that sort of range. I'm bigger, so these numbers need to be kept in context. But I'm seeing these guys still a minute, 2 minutes up the road. So the reality was that I know they're not producing that power, I get that, but they're just slippery, they're streamlined, and I'm pushing these shoulders and my body through the wind. So I can be strong, maybe not even smart on the bike, but I can be strong. Those guys are just very, very fast, and it's just incredible to see them ride. So it was enjoyable to be a part of that. Yeah,
and you can obviously climb well for someone, because you're not small.
No. Well, I was 80. I think I was 85 when I did the second time. I was 80 when I did the first TT, and I'm about 82 now. So I do benefit that once I get down into the low 80s, powder weight is improving. But I've never found climbing to be anything I've been concerned about. Not that I've raced really good guys climbing, but I've even found that the guys that I've been going up hills with, the little guys can accelerate away from me, no problems at all. But even over an hour climb or 40-minute climb, I feel like I can sort of hang in there and get up the climb in a reasonably good speed for a guy my size. The road race, I think I was 34th in 2009.
Oh, right. Okay.
And again, so here's the lesson. Know who you're competing against. So I spent lap after lap in the bunch, stupidly finding myself at the front, rolling back through at different times, getting to the top of the climb, somewhere in top 5 bikes. There's a break down the road. And then eventually, I see Joel Pearson, who I knew had won the Warrnambool before, because I'd been in the Warrnambool race. So he takes off off the road, and I thought, oh, well, I recognise him, I'll go with him. Next thing you know, we're 3 of us doing a couple of laps by ourselves. And so you just spend too much energy in that sort of situation. So for me, the big lesson there was knowing enough of the competitors. I mean, I knew some of the pro guys that were in the group, but just knowing who to follow, who to stay by, and all that sort of stuff. So, and that only comes from, as you know, lots and lots of racing, and it's learning the people around you.
Yeah. That was a great chat. He's such an awesome bike rider, and it's good to take some tips away from him. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below, and we'll try to see if he can answer them for us.